You know, Fady, you look like a Georgian, you think like a Georgian. They kidnapped my assistant for 77 days. Then they bombed my offices.
Now this country is turned into a privately run business by one man.
That Ivanishvili will continue the good things that Saakashvili was doing and stop the bad things. Unfortunately, what we have seen is that he stopped the good things and continued the bad things.
Key figures like Ivanishvili himself and some of the high-ranking so-called officials are sanctioned.
If there was no Ukraine factor, our economy would have been between 4 and 5%.
If you compare an air balloon to a snooker ball, the German and Georgian economy.
What if all the sanctions are lifted on Russia? What will happen to our economy? Better the Georgian mafia than the wife at home. Okay.
Hello and welcome to Talk Georgia, my English podcast covering Georgian and regional politics. Talk Georgia is brought to you by Droeba Media Group, a trusted source of high-quality news and analytical media content, and GSAC, a think tank providing comprehensive political analysis of Georgia and wider Black Sea region, also academic and practical training for postgraduate students and mid-career professionals. To dive into the developments that shape politics in and around this country, today we are joined by Mr. Fady Asly, a Georgian-Lebanese businessman who's been based in Georgia since late 1990s. He's been doing business in Eastern Europe, Caucasus, Central Asia, Africa, primarily in trade of food products and commodities. Also, real estate, insurance, hospitality, industry and consulting. He is chairman of the Channel Georgia Consulting and chairman of the supervisory board of Georgian Mines and Energy, JSC. He is the chairman of International Chamber of Commerce in Georgia. He's a special representative of the ICC Global, Secretary General for Caucasus and Central Asia. His former roles includes, but not limited to, he was a chairman of the supervisory board of the Georgian Rural Development Fund, the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Georgia, member of the Business Council under the president of Georgia. He has a degree in agricultural engineering from American University of Beirut. He's author of 4 books. One of them I have here, Life with Scorpions. Asly is known for his deep love and admiration for Georgia, which he considers his true home. And we all remember his gesture in 2008 when the war was going on and he went to Igoeti checkpoint and talking to the Russian soldiers. Mr. Asly has been a prominent civic leader and the champion of Georgia's economic and political development. So, Mr. Asly, welcome to my show.
Thank you.
Please feel free to add anything important I might have missed from your biography and that you think that the audience should know. After that, I'll move to the questions.
Thank you. Always perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, to start with, what brought you to Georgia, especially in those chaotic 1990s? Because for those who don't know, we call it like dark 90s, because it was dark in this country, because there was a political turmoil and economic instability, rampant corruption, the crumbling infrastructure, shortage of electricity and gas, widespread criminal activities. I remember, cases when people were kidnapped for ransom, corruption everywhere, basically ranging from a police officer or a road policeman to a doctor. So why Georgia and why not Russia or Europe or United States? What brought you to this country, Fady?
Well, I always joke and say that I came here by accident. But I will explain to you why Georgia. Because we were operating in Turkey, in the food business. We were the major importers of fresh fruits to Turkey, to Romania. We started Turkey in the late 1980s. In 1990s, we opened Romania. In 1993, Moldova. In 1996, we opened Georgia and Armenia. Before that, we were already in Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan as well, and operating in the Middle East, in Lebanon, in Egypt. So why Georgia? Because Georgia was the normal expansion market to Turkey. In the early 1990s, till 1996, when we opened our operation here, we were selling from Turkey to Batumi. We had a buyer, his name was Emzari, I remember very well. And then we realized that Georgia by itself could be an interesting market. Instead of supplying it from Turkey, it would make sense to open an operation here. And this is what we did in 1996. Now, I never came to Georgia in 1996. We sent a general manager, a Lebanese guy. And in 1998, our competitors, along with the State Security Service, decided to throw us out of the market. So they jailed our stock keeper, a Lebanese guy. They accused him of intention to smuggle bananas. Intention. It's as if your wife decides to divorce you because she thought you had the intention to cheat on her. And they sealed our warehouses and they transferred $400,000 from our account to the budget, self-service. So I came here with my partner, another Fady, directly to the US Embassy because we were an American company partnering with the huge American companies as well. So it was our normal reflex to come to the US Embassy here. And we met with the chargé d'affaires. There was no ambassador. It was like a vacuum between Courtney and Yalowitz. And but for me, it was love at first sight. I remember very well this first night that I spent at Sheraton. I woke up in the morning. It was on the 20th.
By the way, that time, that was the only decent hotel in Georgia.
Absolutely.
I assume,
yeah, it was the only one. Because I remember very well when we drove from the airport to the Sheraton. First of all, there were no lights on the highway, but that was not the problem. But there were huge potholes on the highway that went from the airport to the Sheraton. It was like driving the Paris-Dakar, you know. And then, but next morning when I woke up, it was the 28th of April, 1998, and I opened the balcony door of my room, and I looked at Tasminda, and I saw those beautiful houses with the red roofs, and it was a clear blue sky. It was an amazing scenery, and that was the moment I fell in love with Georgia. I said, my God, this country is so beautiful. So to make a long story short, we solved our problems thanks to the US Embassy here and Washington as well. They called Tedo Japaridze, who was the ambassador at that time, from the State Department, and finally Shvanazi put all his weight to sort out this issue. We're able to. Why Georgia? Why I moved to Georgia? I will tell you. It's in the book that I wrote, The Life with Scorpions. You know, at that time, the U.S. Embassy had 4 or 5 American staff. That's it. There was no one else. And the political/economic officer was a lady called Molly O'Neill. And 2-3 days after I arrived here, I went and had dinner with her in this very small French restaurant on Kazbegi Street. I'm sure you remember it, called Cabernet.
Yeah.
So I was having dinner with her, just her and me, and she was in love with Georgia. She really loved Georgia very much. And she told me, you know, Fady, you look like a Georgian, you think like a Georgian, and you operate in this part of the world. Why don't you move your operation for this part of the world to Georgia? And at that time, my relationship with my wife was terrible. So, you know, I thought to myself, I said, better the Georgian mafia than the wife at home. Okay. And I decided to settle here. I called my driver because, you know, I had arrived with a carry-on luggage. I didn't have any clothes. And I told him, buy a ticket, go to my bedroom, put some summer clothes, and fly to Tbilisi, bring me my suitcase. I stayed here like a month or a month and a half the first time. So this is how I came here.
Okay, let's move to more kind of serious questions here. So with your decades-long career here, that makes you a veteran of Georgian business. So my question is that what were the biggest challenges that the businesses faced? Like in the 90s when you came, then you had 2000s, and then you had 2010s, now 2020s. And for example, in the 90s, starting a business, I was tough business in this country because, I mean, you needed, at that time we called it Russian word krisha, which is like, translated into English is like roof, but basically it means that you needed a protection. Protection from either from somebody from the government or police, or even criminal, organized criminal authority, just to protect you from the racketeers, some of the other problems. And ironically, the revenue service was the biggest racketeer at that time, I believe, and they were robbing businesses, and instead of just collecting taxes and bringing it to the state budget, they were sticking this money into their pockets. And also red tape. I believe that, that time you had to pay bribe for almost every, permit or license or, I don't know, anything, right? And then we had the Rose Revolution, the Saakashvili's time. These kind of problems disappeared, obviously. So the red tape and bribery was tackled well. But then we had different problems. Then, the government started sometimes seizing businesses right away from the owners. We had some problems of like favoritism in business, and the business atmosphere was polarized at that time. And then there were kind of some of the government favorite businesses and government hated businesses. And obviously the government favorite businesses were getting concessions from the government, and that was not good for the competition. Then we had Ivanishvili coming to power with this promise that the golden era for business would start in this country. And now we ended up in the situation when obviously the whole country became a business. It's a privately owned business, if you ask me. So it's even not a joint stock when the different shareholders are holding certain the portions of the business. So now this country is turned into a privately run business that is run by one man. And it's not well-run business, if you ask me. So to put everything together, these 3 decades, what were the biggest problems that you've encountered as a businessman? But later on, I think you are not just a businessman. So I think you were so active in public life, in philanthropy, in activism. So I think. I'm 100% sure you realize that the business problems and the other problems, the political problems, are so much intertwined. So I will stop here. The floor is yours.
Well, you depicted the situation very precisely, as a matter of fact. I will tell you, during the Shvanazi's time, it was possible to do business if you were close to the spheres of influence, and you had people in government close to the Shvanazi's entourage. Or if you were protected by the thieves-in-law, by the mafia. Security was terrible. I mean, the safety was very dangerous to be here in Georgia, as a matter of fact. For me, from my perspective, we had a lot of problems. They killed one of our employees and robbed, at gunpoint, and robbed our guys from money. They kidnapped my assistant for 77 days. Then they bombed my offices. Then they burned our offices in Poti, and I will spare you, you know, the problems with the revenue service and all those issues. But we never had a krisha ourselves. We always did it, and they tried their best to throw us out, and they always failed. And the question that all of them could not understand was, I mean, why is this guy so determined to stay in Georgia despite all the problems? Who would take so much hits and still remain to do business? And every time we had a problem, I would go public on TV and say what happens today increases my determination to stay in Georgia and expand my business. And for those who tried it, next time try better. The issue is that we were working in the whole area, starting from Romania, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, till Central Asia. And at that time, all the security services were interconnected. They were all talking with each other because they were the remnant of the Soviet KGB, so they all knew each other. And if you would live under pressure in one of those countries, then they will make you live under pressure in every other country. So for us, it was never a matter of making money in Georgia, because we really never made money in Georgia. As a matter of fact, I lost $20 million in Georgia. If I have to count from my bank account what went out, Georgia's experience cost me $20 million. But for me, it was very important to stay, just to send a message to the other countries that don't try to throw us by force, because we will not leave. So that was during the Shvanazi's time. Now, at that time, I was president of the American Chamber of Commerce, and I had, of course, close links to the US Embassy and to the US government. And Shvanazi was very wary and always very cautious about not upsetting the US government. So, you know, I was accused at that time of having created greenhouse conditions for my members at the American Chamber of Commerce, which I'm very proud of, because if I wouldn't have done this at that time, there would be very few foreign investors in Georgia today. So that was during, I mean, corruption was terrible. And I remember, you know, just to put some salt and pepper to our podcast, I remember very well, we were importing bananas by the vessel, because we were covering the whole region. And one day, my assistant came to me and he told me, you know, the deputy minister, the deputy head of customs has stopped our cargo at Poti port, and if we don't pay something, he will not release it. And I told him, you know, we don't pay bribes. And so he went back, and the guy told him, okay, there is a, you know, sofa, you know, a set of leather sofa with 2 armchairs in some gallery somewhere. I remember it was like $2,000-3,000. Buy them for me then, don't give me money. And my guy came to me and told him, we cannot do this. But what I can do, I can write a letter to customs, tell them that I'm offering to the custom department this set of furniture, and then what they do with it, it's not my problem. So we sent an official letter to the Customs Department saying that we were offering a set of leather furniture to the Customs Department. That's the only time that I had to do it, because bananas are very perishable, and if they keep our ship in Poti for 3-4 more days, I mean, $600,000-700,000 worth of goods are to be thrown. So this is what was happening, you know. So that was during the Shvanazi's time. Now, during Saakashvili, they removed all the red tape. But the problem with the Saakashvili's government is divided into two periods. The first period was till 2005, and the second period is from 2009 and onward. And then there was a period from 2006, 7, and 8. The golden period was 2006, 7, and 8. 2004-5, you remember how they were arresting the businessmen close to Shvanazi, Hollywood style with bakalavas and all this, which was terrible for the business climate. And I was very openly criticizing the government for this. And they hated me for it. Then one day, the chief of staff of Saakashvili called me. It was December 2005, and he said, the president tells you to go and sort out this issue with Kezerashvili. He was the head of the revenue service. He doesn't want to see you on TV anymore every day criticizing the government, and Kezerashvili is instructed to sort it with you. So I went to Kezerashvili. I took with me Giorgi Isakadze and Vano Nakaidze. Vano was Kezerashvili's friend, and Isakadze was the Secretary General of the Taxpayers Union, which is the equivalent of BAG now, the Businessmen Association of Georgia, including and so we had a meeting with Kezerashvili, and he said, okay, how are we going to stop this? I told them, stop harassing businesses, and we will stop talking. And he said, okay, then we will not touch any of your members. I told him, no, it's not about my members. It's about the business of community in Georgia at large. And he said, okay, we will touch no one, and if you hear anyone had a problem, call me, that's my mobile number, and I will immediately solve it. I told him, very good. So we shook hands. It was December 2005. From December 2005 till Kezerashvili left, I think in 2007 at one stage to be appointed Minister of Defense, no one had a problem. Everything was going perfectly well. Till end of 2008, after the war, when the financial crisis hit, and after the war, there was no money, no investment in Georgia at all, then the government realized they received $5.5 billion in money from the donors, $4.5 billion as loans, and $1 billion as grant. So they found themselves with a lot of money, with no investments, and they started encouraging their sphere of business people, those businesses who were close to the national movement, to take money or to venture with the government somehow, and to build projects. And this is where things started going south. This is where, they started eliminating the competition of those businessmen just to make sure that they make more money so money can be shared. Now, the money was not going to the pockets of the majority of the people in power. It was going to a black box, and this black box was used for elections and for other things, okay? I mean, to promote the government. And this is when, they started arresting Georgian business people. Okay. Now, for the business community, it was divided into three parts. One part were the businesses that were close to Saakashvili. Another part was the other Georgian businesses, those who had a terrible life. And then there were the foreign investors. Foreign investors were like in a five-stars hotel. They were treated very well. Any problem for foreign investors was solved illico presto. Everything was it was like the golden period for foreign investment here and foreign investors. Georgian businesses that were not close to the government had a terrible life. Like really, they would be arrested, racketeered, thrown in jail till they, it was, what Saakashvili's government did at that time was undoable by any standard. Till Ivanishvili came to power. When Ivanishvili came to power, everyone started feeling that maybe there is hope now, that Ivanishvili will continue the good things that Saakashvili was doing and stop the bad things. Unfortunately, what we have seen is that he stopped the good things and continued the bad things. Okay, this is technically what happened. Now, he didn't touch any Georgian businesses at all, but foreign investors are having a terrible time since 2013 in Georgia. I don't know every single foreign investor in Georgia who enters Georgia, no. But I know every single investor who has a problem in Georgia because they all come to me to tell me about their problems. And really, I cannot count the number of foreign investors who were defrauded by the Georgian courts, by their Georgian partners, by the Georgian government, harassed, racketeered, etc., etc. So now if you are close to the Ivanishvili circle, he has a circle of business people and companies. Those people do very well. And they are the ones you see driving Porsches and the Ferraris and all this in the streets. Other business people, you know, if they have small businesses, no one bothers them. But anyone who has an investment of a few $1 million, if you don't involve someone from the Ivanishvili sphere in your business stops. It will never work if it's a big business. No matter how big it is, okay, it will not work. So, we're back to the Shvanazi's time, where, you know, corruption is rampant. Today at the city hall, there is a menu. You choose from the menu. If you want to remove a tree, it's, let's say, 2,000 laris. If you want to build an extra floor, you're not allowed to, it's $200,000. If you have, there is a menu. I mean, people who are involved in construction don't ask anymore how much it is, because they know for everything how much it costs to pay bribes to make it happen. And it's the same as well in other government organizations. So this is where we stand today. It's very regrettable, because really Georgia lost its window of opportunity of moving forward. Because also bear in mind that for foreign investors, you know, you also have two categories of foreign investors, three categories. You have institutional investors, like the very big institutional companies, organizations. Those guys, they don't touch Georgia, because there is no rule of law, and those guys just go to markets where there is rule of law. Then you have the Western investors. Those also have very cold feet, because those of them who tried here and got burned don't want to, okay. The only investors who come here come from autocratic countries. They know the system. Because in autocratic countries, unless you are close to the decision maker, you cannot do business. So they know here, they come here, they understand that, okay, we have to take someone from the Georgian dream as our partner, and then we can do business. Those are the investors who are coming, but also there are not many of them. Okay? So this is where we stand today.
I'll continue about as we started talking about foreign investments, and I think probably now, I don't have statistics here, but almost historic low now in terms of foreign direct investments. And what adds to the drama is that now Georgia is once again, but it has never been this bad. It's mired with political crisis. Obviously, the legitimacy of the government is questioned inside of the country and outside of the country. Key figures like Ivanishvili himself and some of the high-ranking so-called officials are sanctioned by the United States, by the United Kingdom, you name it, and also, members of one-party parliament, some of the other people connected to Ivanishvili's government, they either are under sanctions or soon could be put under sanctions. So again, would you invest in this country if you were an investor now and looking for space to invest? And what do you think is the solution to the political and, I would say, future economic crisis that Georgia might be facing? Well, I don't know how soon, but probably at some point.
Let me tell you a little about FDI first before I answer your question. So, I mean, the viewer could have a perspective of the FDI in Georgia. You know, since 2005, we can say that the FDI in Georgia has revolved between $1 billion and $2 billion annually, which is very low figures anyway. One of the best years was 2007, when the Georgian government was privatizing everything. There were like $2.1 billion, if my memory is good. Then, you know, figures went down. Even when Ivanishvili came to power, the figures also revolved between $1.2 to $2 billion. To put things into perspective, so people understand what's $2 billion, and I also will dissect the $2 billion so you understand. when the war was raging in Gaza a few months ago, 7, 8 months ago, and you know, I mean, it was fire and blood everywhere, Intel, the chip company, signed an agreement with the Israeli government to build a chip factory in Israel with an investment of $15 billion when it was like in the middle of the war. Why? Why Israel? And because there is rule of law in Israel, okay? And there is stability. There is rule of law and political stability. I'm not speaking of military politics. So when we speak of $2 billion, there's nothing. Now, if you look at 2022, 2023, 2024, in 2022, we were around 2 billion. In 2.2 billion. In 2023, we were 1.9 billion. And in 2024, we were 1.3 billion. So, okay. Now, if you look at the structure of the FDI, because this is very misleading when they tell you FDI. 60% of the FDI is from reinvestment. What's reinvestment? If you take Toyota, they have offices here, okay, a company, Japanese company, or Borjomi, let's say, that is registered in Holland. If at the end of the year, when the year starts, new year, the money, their profits are still in their bank account and they're not sent back to their country of origin, it's considered to be a reinvestment. It's not a reinvestment. The money is here, but it doesn't mean it has been invested, okay? Or if, let's say, another company, foreign company, and when we say foreign companies, you know, according to the statistics department, if the company has a foreign shareholding up to 10%, then it's considered to be foreign. This means if you have 90% Georgian and 10% foreign, it's considered to be foreign. So technically, it's not really foreign. And all the foreign companies that belongs to Georgians and that are registered in Malta, London, Holland, or the Virgin Islands, they're considered to be foreign investors, but those are not foreign investors. Okay, so let's agree on this. Then you have equity investment, which is about 15% on average for the past 10 years. And you have the loans that the private companies take. Let's say we took $30 million from Bank Paribas, BNP Paribas. Then it's considered to be a foreign investment. It's not a foreign investment, it's a loan. So everything. So technically, there is almost no foreign investment in Georgia, okay? And it's going less and less and less. Now, you asked me if I would encourage or why would a foreign investor come here? For example, me, I don't encourage any of my clients because, you know, we have a consultancy firm. We deal with high net worth individuals from the Middle East. I don't encourage them to invest in Georgia. I encourage them to invest in Central Asia, for example, or in Eastern Europe. But the problem is that in Georgia, I cannot guarantee that if they have a problem, anyone can solve that problem. And that's why I don't take the risk to tell them come to Georgia. Me personally, I stopped all my business activity in Georgia in 2018 when Gvirikashvili left, the prime minister, when he left. I trusted him. And when he was appointed prime minister, I worked very closely with him to bring foreign investors here. But when he was dismissed or he resigned, you know, I decided to stop because I don't trust the authorities. Now, why a foreign investors would come here? If, for example, you have an Emirati guy or a Kazakh guy who knows someone from the government or who has close relation with the direct entourage of Bidzina Ivanishvili and who gets personal guarantees from Mr. Ivanishvili that no one will bother him and that his investment is secure, they will come. You know, high risk country, high return. Okay, and they take the risk. They say, we know Mr. Ivanishvili. If something happens to us, we will call him, he will solve the problem. So this is where we stand today with foreign direct investment.
Okay, so let's move a little bit further to a more of a kind of idea of a macroeconomic indicators. For example, Georgia's economic growth, for example, is it real? Or is it a good headline? Because what we hear from Georgia's statistics office, Geostat, for example, I think 3 or 4 days ago, they put out the figures that in April, economic growth was 7.5%. In March, it was over 8%, and so on and so on. So, I mean, very, I would say, sexy figures and eye-catching, obviously, because, I mean, if you compare some of the other countries and the economic growth and the Georgia with like double-digit in last year or the year before, and now, even though we are in such a tough political crisis, we've got this 7% growth. And I mean, also what everybody hears is that from the propaganda TVs that they are comparing these figures to the, like, for example, they say, okay, the Georgia had 8% economic growth, the Germany had 1% economic growth, so, and we are so better off, and the Germans are poor Germans, right? I mean, of course, you don't really need to be a rocket science to guess that the German economy is $5 trillion and the Georgian economy is 30 billion. And it's something to compare is that if you compare an air balloon to a snooker ball, the German and Georgian economy, and in absolute numbers, the 1% growth in Germany is still way bigger than the total of Georgian economy. But of course, I mean, nobody is digging into this. And that's one thing, figures and how genuine figures are. And the second thing is that if this is genuine, where is it going? Because, I mean, the people don't feel it. Unemployment is not down necessarily. Wages are not up. So if Georgia is growing, where this growth is going? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, let me start by giving you a little X-ray of the economic growth historically, so we understand the picture better. When Shvanazi left power, Georgia's GDP was $4 billion, $4 billion. When Saakashvili left, Georgia's GDP was $12 billion. In end of 2020, this means 9 years after the Georgian, 9 years or 7 years after the Georgian Dream came to power, the GDP was $12 billion. It was even 1% less than during the Saakashvili's time. Okay, that's the end of 2020 after the COVID crisis. This is where the GDP was. Okay, now the growth happened between 2021 and 2024. 2021 was the return of the pendulum of 2020, because in 2020 we had a negative growth, okay? So 2021 we had 10% growth. This was the readjustment of the COVID year. Absolutely. It is understandable, yeah. Okay. Now, where the double-digit growth came for 2022, 2023, and 2024. If you analyze the GDP, you will see that 60% of the GDP is driven by the Russians who left Russia, or by the sanctions. Today you have about $2.3 billion of imports of used cars that are re-exported. I mean, re-exported used cars to Central Asia and Armenia that find their way to Russia. Okay. In 2021, the figure was about $160 million. And then it jumped to $2.2 billion. So this fueled the GDP growth enormously. Then the 60% are divided into 4 parts. Trade and used car services, trade, usual, like trade, supermarket and things like this, and trading in general, and used cars, this is the largest part, which is directly connected to the Russian presence in Georgia in 2022 and thereafter. The second part is IT, that is directly connected to the Russians, The third part is construction and real estate directly connected to the Russians. So 60% of our economy is connected to the Russian activity in Georgia because of the war. And the 40% you can consider is the normal economy. This means that if there was no Ukraine factor, our economy would have been between 4 and 5% economic growth, if there was no Ukraine factor, as it was in the years that preceded the COVID year. Okay, that's the normal health of the Georgian economy. Okay. Now, 2024, things cooled down a little with Russia. For example, the remittances went down from $1.5 billion in 2023 to $500 million. We lost $1 billion of money flow. It's not remittances, it's money flow, okay? And this has impacted the growth, definitely. This year is going to be, the growth will be in the 1 digit, because of the cooling factor. A lot of the Russians who were here for a reason or another relocated elsewhere. And the growth will be tempered compared to the 3 years that were really very, very hot. Now the question that poses itself is, what if peace is signed between Russia and Ukraine tomorrow morning, and all the sanctions are lifted on Russia? What will happen to our economy?
It's a big question.
Yeah, and I think that if we don't have a substitute for the Russian factor, then we will be in difficult times. I mean, there will be a burst of the real estate bubble. And you know, a lot of companies will fire their employees, and redundancy will increase. So the figures are correct. Maybe not 100%, maybe 90% or 95%, but the figures are correct. But it's a very unhealthy way of growing the economy when you depend on an economy of war in another country.
And particularly when this country is Russia.
Yes. Yeah. So this is the situation with the GDP as it stands today.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Asly. Anything else you would like to add to our podcast to put more salt and pepper?
You know, I really hope that, you know, the political situation will settle in Georgia, and that Mr. Ivanishvili comes back to his senses and opens up to everybody, not only to Russia, but opens up to the West. Because, you know, the future of Georgia is a Western future at all levels, whether it's the mentality of the people, whether it is the need of the markets. So I really hope that things will settle as quick as possible. So Georgia heads back where it has to be heading in its European family. And this does not mean that we will lose our cultural identity if this happens. Look what happens, like, I mean, you have many countries in Europe today that have a very strong cultural identity, and they keep it. And there is no reason that it's not the same in Georgia. So I don't know, you know, I'm an eternal optimistic. And I really hope that things will settle and common sense will prevail.
Once again, thank you very much for your time, Mr. Asly. Thanks for watching us, to listening to us. Please like us, subscribe to us, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you for having me.